I'm sure you've heard the news. Merrick Garland, the United States Attorney General under President Joe Biden, has been involved in several important legal issues relating to Russia during his tenure, particularly in the context of Russian interference in United States elections and the prosecution of Russian entities or individuals involved in criminal activities. Russia's interference in United States elections. Garland has overseen the Department of Justice's efforts to address Russia's interference in United States elections. The Justice Department under his leadership has supported ongoing investigations into Russian disinformation campaigns, cyber attacks, and other attempts to influence American political processes. Sanctions and Prosecutions. Under Garland's Department of Justice, various sanctions and prosecutions related to Russian nationals have occurred. This includes indictments for cybercrimes, economic espionage, and efforts to evade United States sanctions. Garland has reiterated the importance of holding foreign actors, including Russia, accountable for criminal actions that threaten United States security and interests. Response to Ukraine. Invasion. After Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, Garland and the Department of Justice became involved in international efforts to respond to Russian war crimes and violations of international law. He created a special war crimes accountability team in June 2022 to investigate and prosecute crimes committed during Russia's invasion of Ukraine. This is part of a larger United States initiative to bring Russian war criminals to justice and support Ukraine's sovereignty. Efforts to counter Russian cybercrime. Garland's DOJ has intensified its focus on Russian-linked cybercriminals, including ransomware attacks that have targeted U.S. infrastructure and companies. The FBI and other federal agencies under his leadership have made several high-profile arrests of Russian hackers and seized significant cryptocurrency funds linked to ransomware groups. These are some of the key aspects of Merrick Garland's involvement in issues related to Russia. His role as Attorney General has placed him at the forefront of legal actions concerning Russian interference, cyber attacks, and war crimes during the Ukraine conflict. Merrick Garland, as U.S. Attorney General, has had an indirect but notable connection to issues involving Israel, particularly through his work on combating anti-Semitism, terrorism, and upholding the rule of law. Here are some key points regarding his involvement or connections to Israel-related issues. Personal background and connection to Jewish heritage. Merrick Garland is Jewish, and his family history includes connections to Jewish immigration to the United States to escape persecution. His grandparents fled anti-Semitic pogroms in Eastern Europe, a personal history that informs his views on justice and human rights. Garland has occasionally spoken about his Jewish identity and heritage in relation to his work in the Department of Justice, emphasizing his commitment to fighting discrimination, including anti-Semitism, which has affected Jewish communities, both in the United States and globally. Anti-Semitism and hate crimes. As Attorney General, Garland has prioritized addressing hate crimes, including those targeting Jewish communities in the United States. The Department of Justice under his leadership has been active in prosecuting individuals and groups involved in anti-Semitic violence, threats, and harassment. Garland has also supported initiatives to combat rising anti-Semitism, both domestically and internationally. This aligns with broader United States efforts to support Jewish communities and combat hate crimes against Jews, including those that have implications for Israel. Terrorism and security cooperation. The Department of Justice under Garland's leadership continues to collaborate with Israel on counterterrorism efforts, particularly given the strong United States-Israel relationship in intelligence sharing and fighting terrorism. Both countries face threats from terrorist groups such as Hamas and Hezbollah, which operate in the Middle East. United States law enforcement agencies, including the FBI, maintain close relationships with their Israeli counterparts to prevent and respond to terrorist threats that may affect both nations. Garland's Department of Justice plays a role in overseeing these partnerships. Prosecution of terrorism-related offenses. Garland's DOJ has been involved in prosecuting cases related to terrorism, which sometimes involve Israel or United States citizens affected by terrorism in the Middle East. These cases can include individuals or entities that have provided material support to terrorist organizations that threaten Israel. The DOJ also prosecutes cases involving attacks on United States citizens abroad, including in Israel, under statutes that allow the United States to take legal action when Americans are victims of international terrorism. Neutral stance on Israel in official capacity. In his role as Attorney General, Garland typically avoids commenting on specific foreign policy matters, including the United States' relationship with Israel. His focus is on upholding the law and ensuring justice within the United States, but his department indirectly impacts United States-Israel relations through legal actions related to terrorism, anti-Semitism, and international law enforcement cooperation. While Garland's role as Attorney General doesn't directly involve United States foreign policy towards Israel, his leadership in combating anti-Semitism and terrorism, as well as his Jewish heritage, connect him to issues involving Israel in meaningful ways. As United States Attorney General, his actions and policies resonate beyond domestic borders, influencing international legal landscapes. Attorney General Merrick Garland has been involved in the enforcement and implementation of sanctions through the Department of Justice. While the Treasury Department typically administers sanctions, the DOJ plays a critical role in prosecuting violations of U.S. sanctions, especially when individuals or entities attempt to evade them. Garland's tenure has seen significant focus on sanctions enforcement, particularly related to Russia, cybercrime, and international criminal activity. Here are key areas where Merrick Garland's DOJ has been involved in sanctions enforcement. 1. Russia-related sanctions. Following Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, the U.S. imposed extensive sanctions on Russian oligarchs, companies, and government entities. Under Garland's leadership, the DOJ launched efforts to enforce these sanctions and prosecute those attempting to evade them. One significant initiative was the creation of the KleptoCapture Task Force, designed to target Russian elites and oligarchs who tried to hide assets or avoid sanctions. This task force is focused on seizing assets linked to sanctioned individuals and entities, including luxury yachts, real estate, and financial holdings. Garland has emphasized the importance of holding Russian oligarchs accountable and preventing them from benefiting from criminal activities or violating U.S. sanctions. 2. Cybercrime and sanctions evasion. Garland has also focused on prosecuting individuals and groups involved in sanctions evasion and cybercrime, including Russian and North Korean hackers. Many of these cybercriminals are subject to U.S. sanctions, and the DOJ has been active in pursuing them for crimes such as ransomware attacks and cryptocurrency theft. For example, Garland's DOJ has prosecuted cases involving ransomware groups linked to Russia and North Korea, some of which are sanctioned by the U.S. government. These actions have included seizing cryptocurrency wallets and other assets used to launder money obtained through ransomware attacks. Iran Sanctions Enforcement. The Department of Justice under Merrick Garland has also pursued individuals and companies attempting to violate sanctions on Iran. These sanctions target Iranian entities involved in terrorism, nuclear weapons development, and human rights violations. Garland's DOJ has prosecuted cases involving companies attempting to sell restricted technologies to Iran or individuals helping Iran evade financial sanctions. International coordination. Garland has emphasized the importance of international cooperation in enforcing U.S. sanctions. The Department of Justice under his leadership works closely with international law enforcement agencies, including those in Europe and other allied nations, to enforce sanctions related to global security issues, such as terrorism, human rights violations, and nuclear proliferation. The DOJ's role in corporate sanctions compliance. The Department of Justice is also involved in ensuring that U.S. and multinational companies comply with sanctions laws. Garland's department has pursued companies that violate sanctions by doing business with blacklisted entities or countries, such as those from Russia, Iran, or North Korea. This includes prosecuting companies for making illegal financial transactions or supplying prohibited goods to sanctioned countries. War crimes accountability. As part of the DOJ's broader international criminal justice efforts, Garland has spearheaded initiatives targeting individuals involved in war crimes, particularly in the context of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. This includes those involved in financing or supporting such actions, who are often subject to U.S. sanctions. Garland has been clear about the DOJ's commitment to enforcing these sanctions as part of broader efforts to hold violators of international law accountable. Merrick Garland's DOJ has been actively involved in enforcing U.S. sanctions, particularly in the context of Russia's invasion of Ukraine's cybercrime and global terrorism. Through initiatives like the KleptoCapture Task Force, the DOJ under Garland has played a key role in prosecuting sanctions violations, seizing assets of sanctioned individuals and entities. Merrick Garland, as U.S. Attorney General, oversees the enforcement of sanctions rather than directly setting or determining their amounts. However, under his leadership, the Department of Justice has been instrumental in seizing significant assets from individuals and entities subject to U.S. sanctions, particularly in the context of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. This has led to substantial amounts in asset seizures tied to sanctioned individuals, especially Russian oligarchs, as part of the DOJ's efforts to enforce U.S. sanctions. Here are some notable examples of the amounts involved in sanctions enforcement during Garland's tenure. After Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, the DOJ established the KleptoCapture Task Force to enforce sanctions against Russian oligarchs and other elites. By October 2022, the United States had seized over $30 billion in assets globally from Russian oligarchs and elites. This included assets like luxury yachts, real estate, and bank accounts. While this total includes global efforts, the DOJ and Garland's leadership were critical in prosecuting and seizing these assets within the United States and through cooperation with other countries. For example, the DOJ seized $90 million worth of a yacht linked to a sanctioned Russian oligarch, Viktor Vekselberg, who had been targeted for his close ties to the Kremlin. Garland's DOJ has prosecuted several cases of sanctions evasion, including money laundering and attempts to bypass United States financial sanctions. These prosecutions often involve large financial penalties or asset forfeitures. For example, in 2023, the DOJ seized $112 million in cryptocurrency linked to ransomware payments made to sanctioned actors in Russia and North Korea. This was part of broader efforts to counter cybercrime and sanctions evasion through digital currencies. Sanctions related to Iran. The DOJ has also been involved in cases related to violations of U.S. sanctions on Iran, including the forfeiture of assets tied to illegal financial transactions and smuggling. For example, in 2021, under Garland's tenure, the DOJ worked on cases leading to the seizure of 1.1 million barrels of Iranian oil valued at $110 million, which were part of an attempt to smuggle oil in violation of U.S. sanctions. Penalties for corporate sanctions violations. U.S. companies and multinational corporations that violate sanctions can face significant fines and penalties. While the Treasury Department, OFAC, typically sets these penalties, the DOJ often enforces the sanctions and prosecutes violations. For example, in 2023, a European company settled with the U.S. government for $1.7 billion for violating sanctions on Iran by conducting prohibited business activities. Coordination with international partners. Many of the seizures and enforcement actions taken by Garland's DOJ have involved close cooperation with international partners, contributing to the overall amounts of sanctioned assets confiscated across multiple jurisdictions. Merrick Garland's DOJ has played a key role in enforcing U.S. sanctions, leading to the seizure of billions of dollars in assets, particularly related to Russian oligarchs and sanctions evasion. While the DOJ does not directly set sanctions amounts, its enforcement actions have led to significant financial recoveries from those attempting to evade sanctions or violate U.S. law.